we're a little bit late today. In all honesty, Michael's making jokes over here like, I hope Garrett's putting on his Halloween costume. Nope, the dog had to go outside. That's the truth. So, just didn't get a break in between meetings today. So today is April 21st. It's just
I
open
think now
office
you have to
hours.
put it on. I think now you have to put the costume on.
It's it's in a bin in the garage or maybe the attic. Like it's not happening right now. Sorry.
It's like a punishment. Like if something bad happens, you're gonna have to put that.
Yeah.
You have to
It's
wear
like the
that.
cone on the head, sit in the corner.
All
Oh
right.
man, that's funny. All right. So a few links to show you guys today and to talk about. And then Richard, I think, has some updates to the FFU tool that I think he wants to dive into a little bit. So that's kind of the agenda today. And then if we have specific questions, we'll be sure to go through those as well. So let me jump ahead here. And I'll just pull open the blogs. I haven't got them in a pretty format yet for you to follow along with. So hang on and let me pull this up, and I'll do that before the call is over. Um, just from the Intune customer success blog, one of our MVPs has done a lot of work on frontline mobile devices, particularly in the healthcare space. So there's been a series of these blogs coming out just on real world experience in deploying these devices inside of Intune. So if you're an academic medical center, you might find these helpful. This one in particular is all about it's not really even technical. It's more about what's the business reality of these devices, what is it doing for you, and how do we treat them within the organization. So more of a business value blog, but I think a great foundation for you to look at and understand how you can leverage Intune to implement that correctly and see success with that. So if you're interested in that, that's up there. Um, this one was actually published on the Sentinel blog, but I actually get this question every now and then from a customer of do we support ingesting Intune logs into a SIEM such as Microsoft Sentinel. So Sentinel is our native SIEM solution. There's others out there, of course, but if you're looking to ingest those Intune logs from your endpoints directly into a SIEM, this is a great little blog that walks you through how to do that, in particular with Sentinel. So if you're a Sentinel customer, Sentinel is an additional cost. It's not part of your A3, A5 agreement necessarily. There are costs associated with that. So maybe not everyone has Sentinel in their environment, but if you do, just a fantastic blog on ingesting those logs, picking and choosing which particular tables you want to ingest in there for you to be able to run those queries against. So that could help you from a threat intelligence perspective and tracking down any issues that occur within your environment and staying a step ahead, especially if devices are falling out of compliance or something to that effect. So kind of a meaty blog, lots of FAQ in there as well, but just a fantastic one that I think might have been missed if you're not paying attention to the Sentinel blogs. So I wanted to share that one with you.
Are you actually following the Sentinel blog?
No, I'm just magic.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, no, I happened across it somehow when I was looking up something for a customer, and it was like last week that they published that, so thought I'd throw it in there, just by happenstance. Um, have we talked about this one already? I don't think
We
we
haven't. I was
did.
actually just reading this one. I saw it when it came out, but this came out after our last
It was
last
after.
meeting.
Okay, well, go ahead.
It came out on Thursday. This one's it's a weird blog because it makes it seem like we're going to be making some hardening changes, but if you look at the current administrative action hardening phase begins, so right underneath the heading that you have, the why administrative action hardening is necessary for security, we mentioned that we made these changes back in August and September.
Yeah.
So the TLDR on this whole thing is sysprep. If if you've been creating images and you're not sysprepping, you're cloning the system ID. And it's funny because Michael Niehaus wrote a blog about this. Like, why is this even a thing now? Like, I think we all should know that we need to sysprep if we're creating custom images. Some people don't know that. And for a long time, it was actually kind of like should we do it? Should we not do it? We had new SID that was written by Mark Rusinovich through sysinternals. So there was this back and forth a long time ago. But eventually, sysprep, we all know that we need to sysprep. And so this blog post kind of goes through, if you're noticing any issues, what we've changed around UAC. A lot of this really just kind of goes back to something that we did in August and September. So we must be getting support calls, or we must be getting something must have triggered writing this blog post. But at the end of the day, like it says, recommended solution. If you're doing any cloning of a Windows image, you need to make sure that you're sysprepping. And this should be the end all be all. If you have questions about it, we're telling you right now, you need to do this. So,
yeah.
Oh, what is that? Wait, hang on. There it said March 26th. What is that? This workaround is replacement for a KR-based group policy. And these settings were released on Windows updates between August 26th and March. Okay, to disable loopback protections. So.
And you can only obtain the new registry key by opening an assisted support case and certifying that you can rebuild clone devices prior to the end of 2027.
Yeah. At the end of the day, sysprep, that's basically what the whole blog post is telling you to do. And if you are having issues with things ever since September, then it's most likely that you may not be sysprepping those machines.
Yeah. I'm glad that was kind of your read on it, because I was kind of reviewing it and I'm like, I don't get the point of it. But
I was thinking that we were going to make it we were making some changes. There was going to be something coming up in the next few months, and we're letting you know. And if you run into issues, it's most likely because you're not sysprepping. But I kept reading through it and I was waiting for it. And usually you have to wade through these things. We don't have in big bold letters, this is what the change is going to be. You kind of have to, you can't just scan some of these things. You actually have to read them.
Yeah.
And so I just kept looking, and I'm just like, am I missing something here? But it just seems like we made some changes a while ago. And so I've got to think that there's some support. Either some support things are going on, or cases are being opened, or maybe there is something that is going to, there's a shoe to drop at some point. But yeah, it was just a weird, it's kind of just weird out of the blue blog post.
Yes. Okay. Moving on. If you are utilizing Windows 365, there is a new monitoring and reporting tab that is in public preview. And this blog post was actually published last week as well. But at least in my demo EDU tenant, it just arrived this morning. Maybe late yesterday. But it's taken a long time to. You got it yesterday?
I got it yesterday. It was we posted this 2 weeks ago. I hate when we do this too.
I know.
Because it's it's now available. And so you go look in your tenant, it's nope, not there. And so it's okay, well, when is now? Because now is not now. Now is 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, exactly. So we've kind of been waiting for this, but it is pretty phenomenal to see the real-time data that we're getting, near real-time data that we're getting inside of the Cloud PC monitoring report now. It's very interactive, allows you to adjust, the time from the last, I think, 7 days to the last 28 days in most cases, but you can also filter based on specific data types. I was messing around with it, and there's a lot of data inside of it. So much better reporting. And again, for those of you that maybe are fairly new to the virtualization space, we've got Azure Virtual Desktop. That's the PaaS solution, and we have some pretty good monitoring and reports that you could build, custom reports that you could build to get this level of detail from an AVD perspective. But from a Windows 365 perspective, we didn't have this type of visibility, at least so accessible. You had to go build custom reports as well. So we're bringing this to the forefront inside of Intune. It's in the reports section, and there's a new Cloud PC monitoring tab. What's also cool about it is you have your general connection health tab, but there's also a users and devices tab, so you can actually look up a specific user and see all the Cloud PC instances that they have running, where they're running from, the connection quality, all that goodness is in there too, so you can get really pointed in what you're looking up. And then there's also a configuration monitoring. So if you wanted to look up these devices based on provision policy or the type of cloud PC that you're deploying. So very interactive, very functional. Um, again, what I saw in my limited testing as of this morning, I was pretty pleased with it. I don't know if you have any comments on it, Richard, but that's my feedback.
I think we need to get to the point where we can just type in and say, I need a report that says XYZ, and then it just spits the report out.
That's called Security Copilot.
Yeah, we need to get to the point where all of our education customers have access to Security Copilot without having to pay additional for it.
Oh,
that's where we need to get.
Why did you open that can of worms? You know better, Richard.
I mean, because at the end of the day, like when I went through those reports, I was confused. Like there's a lot of data in there, and I don't know that a lot of that data is really what people necessarily need to see.
That's fair.
And so what I think is that like we're at the point now where you can attach to an API and ask whatever data you can ask for whatever data you want in a report. We got the capability of doing it. And so I think at some point we'll get there, like, and at some point the cost of this stuff comes down, so that way you can do what I'm describing. But we'll get there. But having pre-canned reports today, like, to me, it's just like we've got all this AI stuff. We have these tools. We have these APIs. We have the data. We should be able to easily just be able to
go
ask
build
for
me
the
a
data
report.
and get it back. Yeah.
I want a graph. I mean, I agree with you to a degree. I think having some pre-canned reports are helpful for those who don't want to go generate a prompt or have to customize that output. I agree, though, that some of these are a little abstract, right? Cloud PC initiated connection count by client OS trend. Could that be named a little better? Yeah, for sure. Because it looks like the reports there's kind of a repeat. Though, it's a repeat.
But the reports on the right are really what confused me the most, is because why do I have this other report that's truncated that I can't even read the full title of? Right?
If you hover over it, you can see it.
Right.
And you can download it.
I can export it to CSV, right? So that's an endpoint in Graph. That export button, that's just an endpoint in Graph. So like we got the data. The data's there. Just give me a box where I can just ask for the report that I want, and then save it, and then make my own little dashboard for the things that I'm truly interested in. And this is not Cloud PC. This has nothing to do with Windows 365 and how they're doing it. I think it's good that we're providing more data. But this is more of a broader thing where I've got all this data in Intune. Let me just ask for the data, because the APIs are there at Microsoft. You have that data. Just let me ask for it, because I can do that now I'm doing it right now with WorkIQ. I can do it right now with Copilot, with M365 Copilot Chat. I can do it with CoWork. Like, we have access to that stuff for other things. Let's kind of do the same thing here.
But like, this is cool too. Like, you can look up a user and you can take bulk action items on those cloud PCs pretty quickly. Like, there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you'll notice here, right? Obviously, mine's not returning anything because I have a demo tenant, but the time range is set for the last 24 hours. So if I bump that up to the last 28 days, then I'll start getting some data in here. But I think I'm excited because I do think this will be helpful, especially when troubleshooting, if you need to troubleshoot anything. But yes, I think Mark has a great point. This is in preview, so we could still make some changes to this. But
I guess, Garrett, I have to click that big button that says leave feedback.
Yes, but someone actually has to listen to you.
Well, right, yeah, that's the other thing. They have to.
I'll just go tell them. I'll go tell them. Listen to Richard. Anyways, it's available.
He's got
now.
good ideas.
The blog post was was released 2 weeks ago, but I think it's just now hitting GA.
Yeah.
Let's see. Continuing on, kind of on the virtualization front, App Attach in Azure Virtual Desktop now supports Windows Server 2025 and Server 2022. So if you are virtualizing any servers in your environment, specifically with those, and you're trying to do App Attach, we've got some capabilities now for that. I don't mess with this too much. I don't know if you all do, but it seems to be the preferred method for adding those applications directly into the OSs. I think most people would prefer to do that. But again, if you have those session hosts inside of AVD, you've got App Attach support now. And this one you threw in, again, this was just published
this morning.
What? No, it was before noon my time because I didn't see it.
Well, that would be this
noon
morning,
Central
right?
time. It wasn't. No, it was afternoon at least Central time. After Central time. So.
Well, for me, where I live, it's this morning.
Correct. So yeah.
I guess we have to start using universal time now.
Yeah, when we talk, yeah. So announcing public preview of redundant TCP support for RDP multipath for ABD. Did you read this, Richard? Because I didn't.
I did.
Well, go ahead and talk about it.
The TLDR on this one is that if you just scroll down, there's a picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words in this case. So what we're doing now, so how we bypass the need for port 3389 is we do a reverse TCP connect by default. And we prefer to use UDP. So we can use UDP to connect to whether it's AVD or Windows 365. In this case, this is only for AVD. So if you're using AVD today, I'm hoping that most of you are using UDP. Depending on your network infrastructure, you may not be able to do that. You may only be able to use TCP. TCP is going to be slower, and so you might notice that there's slight network latency between using UDP, but UDP is the preferred way to go. And actually, UDP via stun is really the most preferred way. If you can't do stun because of NAT and related other network issues, then we'll fall back to using turn. Turn is what most people can use. Most environments, turn will work well. With turn, we actually have two different connection type. I mean, it's the same connection type, but we have redundancy for that connection type. We didn't have redundancy for TCP. So if you couldn't use UDP at all and you were going over TCP to your AVD environment, you would only have one path. And if that broke or there was some issue connecting to the gateway, we didn't have that redundancy built in. That's what this blog post describes, is that now we have that two TCP redundancy that's going to allow you to connect.
That's cool.
So
great feature.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, and I think you have to opt into it. I just want to call out something at the bottom. How to enable it. It's in public preview. You need to be in the validation pool. So your VMs will need to be set up for validation. And it's only supported on the Windows app on Windows using that version of the client. So if you're on Mac, if you're using the Windows app on Mac,
you're SOL.
No, it's not going to work. It's only the Windows app on Windows.
Cool.
While we're in preview.
Yeah, at least while we're in preview. But it's public preview. Very cool. Okay, a couple more items that I just wanted to throw out there for a few of you. This is actually a blog on the innovations for OneDrive, and you're probably thinking, like, why do I care about this? There's all this like AI and
I care about it.
Copilot stuff. Okay,
I care.
There's some nuggets in here that I want to share with you all, and let's see if our nuggets are similar here. Some improvements if you have Copilot plus PCs and you can do the semantic search inside of File Explorer. There's some improvements on searching for those files inside of OneDrive, which is really exciting. Ask Copilot in File Explorer also. Again, Copilot plus feature. If you hover over the Copilot icon for that OneDrive icon, you can then summarize the document, etc., things like that. Quick call out.
Plus? Hang on, was that Copilot? Was that specifically Copilot plus PC? I didn't think that was Copilot plus PC. I think this is just in File Explorer.
Did they pull it out now? Oh, okay.
So this is File Explorer in Home. So when you open up File Explorer, we have that new home page that we added like over the last year or so. Now you can actually interact with Copilot directly in File Explorer on those files.
Got it. Okay. Nice. I thought that was a plus feature, but I stand corrected.
I don't think it was.
Okay. Just if you haven't heard or you haven't seen it yet, we have new hero links for sharing content. And remember, across the M365 ecosystem, we kind of have that similar shared UI for sharing out documents. So you're going to start seeing this rolling out. We made this announcement, I think, at Ignite last year. I know we have it internally now, and it's a little bit different. So there's some changes.
It was a little confusing when I first was using it.
So it says coming this summer to you all. So if you have any trainings that you do with end users, you may want to, look at this and update any of your training material or instructional content that you provide your end users. But it is a better experience as far as being able to manage the links themselves and who has access to the content instead of generating a whole bunch of different links with different permissions. You have one kind of unified link and you can modify those permissions afterwards. That's really all. I didn't plan on talking about all of that, but I wanted to call a couple of things here on the Windows front. Number one, that sync support is increasing from currently an existing of 300,000 items on Windows. We can sync up to 300,000 items directly with the OneDrive client side of Windows. That's increasing to 1 million items, that's a lot of items. So I don't know that any of you have the need to sync up to 1 million items, but I could see maybe some research labs or things like that that you may want this capability for. So
I'm actually curious about because it says that if you don't meet the requirements, then you're going to go back to 300,000 items. What are these additional hardware requirements?
You want me to click on it?
Yeah, I'm actually.
So this one.
Number of items, but I don't see anything for hardware. You scroll down.
Yeah.
Windows specific limitations.
Yeah. So don't be on AVD.
You can't be on AVD.
I wonder why.
Probably kill if you're on like multi-session. Probably kill the session host.
Yeah. So those are the Windows, and then it goes.
I'm not seeing like any hardware requirements in here though, like specific amount of RAM or Copilot plus PC or anything like that. Okay.
I wonder if it's a.
Or what? Sorry, you're kind of scrolling fast.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, well, we don't.
I don't think so. Yeah. Anyways, yes. So you have to be on the OneDrive Insiders ring. You have to have those additional requirements, whatever they are, and there's some additional configuration settings. But just know that that's going to be rolling out, or it is. I'm sorry, it's in public preview now.
But it can be 2 weeks before you see it.
Fair. Visual refresh for macOS as well. I'm going to kind of skip over this one, but this is a couple of other things that I wanted to bring to your attention, which is that you'll now have the ability to right-click on a local folder or file. I think we've had the ability to do files, but not folders inside of OneDrive. So you can right-click on the folder, move that entire folder to OneDrive directly through the context menu, which is really nice for backing up large sets of files. And then this one is also interesting, and I have some questions around it, but we are introducing custom OneDrive folder names to the client that can be set with a GPO. So if you've got OneDrive today and you've got a Windows device and you add the sync client to Windows, you'll notice that in File Explorer it adds the username with a hyphen and then the organization name. And generally that's based on the tenant, right? What we're saying is that there will be a new GPO where we can customize this mostly to help address a max path issue. So when you're trying to copy files over and the file name is too long or what have you, I'm sure we've all run into that time or before. We can set custom names for that OneDrive sync folder itself. And I find this interesting because number one, like, yeah, we're going to keep the username there and then the hyphen and then the custom name. So in theory, we can set this GPO to, instead of, um, something, a long university name, you could just use the abbreviation. But I'm also curious, and we'll have to test, is if you could target this GPO to different users, if you're a university or a school district, if you could actually change that custom name depending on who you're targeting to maybe be the school or the campus name or maybe the mascot or something to that effect. So this could be interesting and a good friendly name change for our end users. Um, I know it's tied to the tenant ID specifically in the GPO, but I don't know. I assume we can target different groups within the organization, but I don't know yet. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention because that can cause some issues, especially with copying files between OneDrive and a client. And so we've got now some friendly names that we can put in there. So
if you want to have a lot of fun, take drivers and put them into your OneDrive. you want long paths.
I was
You'll
thinking
get
about
long
that
paths. I
scenario.
guarantee
Yeah.
you'll get that.
Yes. And yes, Tom.
But
Go ahead.
what I find this funny because we're talking about all these improvements we're making to Windows. Well, why don't we just fix MaxPath? Instead of this, instead of having OneDrive create a GPO, like I think we've kind of gotten to the point where there's a lot of things, not just OneDrive, that MaxPath impacts. Like as someone who has to deal with driver paths and as a tool that downloads drivers and extracts them and copies them, like these paths are so long. And our vendors aren't making them easier to they're not adhering to any sort of rules with these. So why are we limited to 256 characters for the path length? And then you can enable max path support in the OS, and certain things will adhere to that, others won't. And so we have just this big inconsistency with how max path operates. So in this case, where we've got a GPO that we set some, well, what I guess they're probably doing is they're probably creating a junction or maybe like a substring or something behind the scenes to make the path smaller. Instead of doing these workarounds, why don't we just fix the OS to do that?
Yeah.
But
it's a great question. I mean, you could also bring the same thing about why are Windows names still limited at 15 characters?
They're not. So here's the thing: they're not. You can name a device longer than 15 characters. There's a net BIOS limit of 15 characters. And unattend XML is limited to 15 characters because of that net BIOS limitation. But you can actually name a Windows device like 64 characters if you want. I've got, well, I don't know if I have them still in my tenant now. But when I was provisioning devices with a provisioning package and had it writing the names, it would write the names out to 60 plus characters. So we can definitely do that. So I don't understand why we couldn't fix MaxPath. We should be able to do that.
Yeah. Really quick, going back to this blog, there is a link here that links you to an IT admin's docs page for configuring this. And yes, there is some end user disruption. You have to unlink and relink the account for that name to take effect on the sync account. So if it's a new device, no big deal, right? Like many of you are going to do summary images and things like that. I think that's fine. But if it's their personal desktop and you don't get reimaged that often, or you're not going to rebuild the profile or anything like that, then you'll have to unlink and relink the client itself, and that will recreate that folder with the correct name. So there are some caveats to this. So good blog to read and good doc to read if you want to test this out over the summer. I'm not, this chat, you guys are going off the handle.
It's probably because of me going off the handle.
Sort of, a little bit.
It's like leaking into the chat.
So yeah, those
Is that
are the
all?
big updates. Yeah, the other one I
Cool.
didn't throw it up there too, but I did want to also remind you. I threw it in the chat last, 2 weeks ago, but it was right after we met that we are making a change to the M365 apps channel configuration as well as semi-annual enterprise channel is being merged into the monthly enterprise channel. So there's really no action necessary on your part as an IT admin. I just want you all aware that if you have any Office apps out there that are on the semi-annual channel that you're expecting to get updates every 6 months or whatever, they're going to be getting updates every month. And you'll just start seeing the updates flow through. But I want to make sure that y'all have that expectation set. That's a message center post. There's no blog around it. So go read the message center on that. That's it.
Cool. Very cool. So shifting gears now to FFU builders. So we're now on build 2604.1. So I released that last week, Thursday, Friday, whenever it came out. Lots of changes. I think a few weeks back, I gave a preview of what the user interface was going to look like. We put that into the Fluent branch. I know a lot of you guys played with that and were using it. And so we basically just took that branch and made it 2604. So now between main, UI, Fluent, those three branches all have the same code. I'll get to a point now where I'll probably just have a dev branch. I'll go back to having the original dev branch. So I'll have a dev branch for the stuff that I'm actively building, and then we'll just have main. That way we don't have this like UI and Fluent, and because we were kind of in this really weird state where we were moving from just the script to the user interface, but then I wanted to get the user interface styled, but I couldn't use Fluent because there was a bug in .NET 9 that got fixed in .NET 10, which then .NET 10, all of that code goes into PowerShell 7.6. So I needed 7.6 in order for us to get to where we are right now. So now that everything has been merged together, we can now go back to just really having two main branches. We'll have main, but then we'll also have the dev branch, which all the new stuff going forward we'll go to. So I'll have that set up sometime this week. But with 2604, what came out, what's new? So obviously the new user interface with the new skinning, so using Fluent. So that was the big one. And so when you download the new release, moving forward, you will see this what's new page. And basically all it's doing is it's taking the release notes that I write and it's putting them all here. So you don't have to, I mean, you could read you're gonna have to go to the site anyway to go download. I don't have a built-in upgrade utility. Someday I'll probably write something, but for now you'll have to go and download the release and manually overwrite your FFU development folder. But yeah, so I'll give you the release notes here, and then you can go and download whenever you're ready. So we got the new Fluent style. As I mentioned, it needs PowerShell 7.6. A lot of you guys probably have 7.5. 7.6 just went GA maybe about a month ago or so. So download that, use that. If you're running 7.5 and you try to use the latest release, it'll work. But what you'll find is the headers for the list views will be missing. They'll just be missing. You won't see any header information here. So you need to be on 7.6. That's the bug that I came across it seems like over a year ago, that I had to wait till .NET 10 came out to fix that. So got the new Fluent style, reorganized the build tab or the build tab. All the stuff here has been reorganized to use these new expanders. So the expanders now kind of keep things more organized. So you can expand them out, do what you need to, and we'll talk about some of the new expanders that I've added here in a minute. We fixed an issue with Surface and Lenovo drivers. This was fixed a while ago in the UI branch. The Surface page, this actually changed to using a new, or they changed the support page for Surface drivers. And so while we were parsing off that page, they just completely changed it. So because they broke that, I had to make a choice. Do I continue to use their new page, which actually had multiple pages that you kind of had to go and parse against? So we either needed to do that or use the Microsoft Learn page for the Surface driver downloads. So this page has just a table that you have to parse, which is a little bit easier than having to click through a model and then go to the models within that, or go through like the Surface Laptop Go, and then have to go through that individual page to go get the other links. So it's just easier to just kind of parse this table. So we ended up shifting to doing that. And then for Lenovo, Lenovo is actually there was an issue where you couldn't download the models, like it would fail trying to go and get the model list, and so we were able to fix that. That wasn't a big deal. New homepage build. So what you're seeing here, that's the new look and feel. Capture ISO. So this is actually a pretty big deal. So for a lot of people, when they first start with FFU Builder, they aren't able to capture out of the VM. They'll build the VM will install all the apps and everything. It'll sysprep and then it'll shut down. And then what we would normally do is just we would attach the capture ISO for WinPE, and then we would go and capture out of the VM the FFU. But we have to capture it from there to your host machine. And that would require us to create a local account. It'd require that your firewall allowed port 445 from the VM to your host, which it's all self-contained, but there's still some firewall stuff that we need to make sure that we have available so we can copy. And so there's just some network-related issues that you can potentially run into. So a lot of support issues were really just trying to fix some local network stuff that was on the local machine. And so now we just bypass all that. So we've gotten rid of the capture ISO requirement. And so now once we're done sysprepping, we're just going to directly capture the VHD. And so that improves things a lot for not just troubleshooting, but also speed. It makes it much faster now. And it also reduces the need for the VM switch. So we no longer need to have a VM switch, although it will be necessary if you want to do any sort of internet connectivity during the FFU build process. So if you need language support for custom languages, or then you'll have to be on the internet to actually download those languages. If you look at the documentation that we have on how it recommends you download language packs, it says that you should be on the internet to do that. So I've got a number of customers that are in Europe and overseas that have to do this, and so they've been having to attach the switch during the build of the FFU in order to get access to the internet so they can go download that stuff. So so you'll still need the switch for that, and so that's that. Refreshing the Windows SKU after fallback SKU selection. We had an issue where if you had like an ISO, or if you're using the ESD and you picked a SKU that wasn't in the ISO or in the ESD file, then it would still use that SKU when it came time to naming the device. So if you pick the SKU that doesn't exist, we'll prompt you and say, hey, the SKU doesn't exist, pick the right one. But we never went through and actually set that SKU as the actual SKU that you select. We would use the original SKU that you picked. And so for naming, it was causing some issues. And I think there's some other issues too that it was causing. So I just fixed that issue. We don't use the registry anymore for file naming. So this is actually a big deal too, because there were some hard-coded wait times that we put in to like sleep like a minute or two. Any sleep times that we had that were dealt with for loading and unloading of the registry, those are gone now. And so naming now should no longer require us to mount the FFU, read the registry, figure out what the build is, what if Office is installed. We used to do that to automate the whole thing. This was done like years ago. But now that we have the custom FFU naming template, there's no need for this anymore. So we just got rid of it. So tying back into the VM switch stuff that I was talking about earlier, we now have a checkbox to enable VM networking. So what this does is actually it enables the network switch during the FFU build process. So if you do need access to the internet while it's building, you can do that. The main reason that this was turned off is for sysprep issues, where if you had opened a UWP app, opening a UWP app while you're in audit mode, that'll install the application to the user profile that is currently logged on. And in that case, it's the admin account in audit mode. And if you try to run sysprep after you open up one of those apps, for instance, if you were to hover over the widgets app in the bottom left corner, if you have the widgets turned on, which in audit mode, it's on by default. If you were to just hover over that, it would actually install widgets in your VM, in your user profile, in that admin user profile. And when that happens and you go to sysprep, it fails. Now, there's a number of things that require that you might install, like Notepad++, WinRAR, anything that would install a right-click context menu. Those applications would create a right-click context menu item that actually runs in your local user profile. And so all of those things break sysprep. So what I did a few builds back is I put some code in that would check to see prior to us sysprepping if there was anything installed in the user profile context at just before we were about to sysprep, and then I would go and remove all of those. And then by doing that, that actually led us to being more comfortable with enabling networking during the build. Because that was the biggest problem, was that you might go out and download apps and you're doing all this stuff during audit mode, but then you would break sysprep. But now that we can handle the issues that were breaking sysprep to begin with, now I'm more comfortable allowing people to just use the internet if they need to during the build. So we flagged this as experimental. I haven't had any issues at all with it. So if you need internet access while the build is running, then you can do that. If you don't need it, then just keep it off. There's no need for you to turn it on. Okay, device naming. So device naming has always been somewhat of a challenge because the way that we originally wrote this was, first of all, there was no UI to begin with. So everything was all done from the command prompt, or I'm sorry, from PowerShell. And we needed to basically use unattend to do device naming. And so we would have an unattend XML file, and then we would create this prefixes.txt file. So kind of like if you're using Autopilot today, you have your device name prefix that you put in your Autopilot profile. We basically do the same thing. We have a prefixes.txt file. You fill in the prefixes.txt with the prefixes you want, and you just kind of put that in an unattend folder on the USB drive, and then we just grab that information out of that folder, and we do the device naming. Well, now that we have a UI, we sort of need to bring that into the user interface to show how all that works. And so under build, there's now this new device naming expander, and this is where you can choose how the device should be named. And so you could do no device name, we can prompt, or you can specify a device name. And so in here, this is basically like the prefixes.txt file, but just with a single item in it. So in this example, I have 1234 dash and then %serial%. So if we had a prefixes.txt file with just 1234 dash, it would append the serial just like this. So this is pretty much the same thing as that. It just makes it easier for people to say, I just have one prefix I want to use, or maybe a suffix. Maybe I want to do serial and then some characters at the end of it. Then I can do that. There aren't any additional variables right now, only serial is what I've included. I could do random just to be consistent with what Autopilot does. But for now, we have %serial. If there's others that people want, go to the discussion section in the repo. Let me know if there's anything else that you want. It's got to be something that we can easily get from WMI. We could probably do, if you have a text file or something you want to use, then we can probably do something else. But I'd have to have a lot of people that are interested in it for me to look to integrating something like that. We have the prefixes still. This doesn't change. It's pretty much the same thing. What we've done in here, though, is when you browse to your prefixes file, the prefixes file will import all the stuff from the text file. Now, if you want to add prefixes, you can do that in this box here below. And then you can save that, and then that will that save will take effect in the file, and then it'll show up here. So, so you can you can modify your prefixes file within FFU Builder. And then we also have serial number to device name mapping. So if you have, this was actually brought to me through someone that manages servers. So they like to have a serial number, and then based on that serial number, I want to have the device name be something based off of that serial. So in this case, if your serial number was ABC12345, then we would name the device corp-001. And so you can kind of see how all that works. The text box here, the save, serial mapping, the browse, this all pretty much operates the same way as prefixes.txt. So it's the same kind of situation there. And then tying into all of this is unattend.xml. So with unattend.xml, we now have a user interface for this in this expander that allows you to control where your unattend file path is. The main benefit to this is you can save your unattend file anywhere you want. It doesn't matter where it's at. It doesn't have to be in the unattend folder. Because prior to this, it had to be in the unattend folder, upgrading was kind of a pain if you had a custom unattend file. So if you had an unattend _x64 file that had a whole bunch of custom things that you've added to it, anytime you needed to upgrade FFU Builder and you wanted to copy and paste an override, you would overwrite with the unattend XML file that we provide in the repo. So what this will allow you to do is you could actually browse to a different location, and that'll save, there's now a new variable or a new parameter for the unattend file. So that file can be in any location now. So it doesn't have to be in the unattend folder, but the default is still going to be this location, and then you just can change it if you want. And it's the same for the ARM64. If you're building ARM devices, you have to have a separate unattend file for that. And then we just identify whether or not we use copy or inject. And then depending on how you name the device, we will set the appropriate checkbox for this. So if I'm specifying the device name and I'm using serial number, then in order to get the serial number, I can't inject the unattend. That won't work, because when we inject an unattend to the FFU, it's going to be a static name. So inject really should not be used by many people. Copy unattend should really be used by most. And so if I take this out, then it's going to unlock, because I could specify a device name and I could make this just some static text like, computer or whatever. And so if that's going to be static text, then I can inject it. But now all the machines that I image will have the exact same computer name. So in most cases, if you're injecting just the unattend XML, then you're probably going to just be on device name. But most people shouldn't be doing that. They really should be copying unattend and then picking how they want to do the name. So those tie together. But for the most part, you shouldn't have to think too much about the unattend stuff. Realistically, you'll probably want to pick a path that isn't going to be overwritten for your unattend XML file. So save your unattend file somewhere else, and then just browse to it and use it that way. And then for the device naming, just pick what makes sense for you and your environment. What else? We fixed Office installation issues on ARM64 VMs for the longest time, and this made no sense to me whatsoever, but installing Office on ARM with the Office deployment tool, you had to be connected to the internet for it. You could download the files just fine, but if you tried to install them offline, the installation would just hang. It just wouldn't work. At some point between, I want to say probably September till now, we fixed the Office deployment tool, so this actually works offline now. So we had a restriction in FFU Builder that would block installing Office on ARM64 builds because of this weird issue with the Office deployment tool. So that has now been fixed, and if you're building ARM64 VMs now, I'm sorry, if you're building ARM64 FFUs, then Office should work fine. We can now automate, or I'm sorry, we will now auto-generate the computer name element in the unattend XML. So before, when you were using the unattend XML, we would always say you have to have the computer name as the first element of the specialized phase. And so that you're kind of restricted in how we did the naming. Now, if you're setting that you want to add a computer name, and we detect that there is no computer name element in your unattend XML file, we'll just write it for you. And so there's no, you don't have to put anything in the unattend XML in a specific spot anymore. We just We'll just say, if we don't find it, we'll put it in. If we do find it, then we'll just adjust it as we need to. So we totally automated that. I mentioned the custom unattended XML paths, and then some of you guys ran into some issues last month with being able to service the latest cumulative update into FFU Builder. The issue was actually related to the March 31st out-of-band update installed on your host machine. So there was actually 2 out-of-band updates that came out last month. One, I think, is like March 24th, and then the next was like March 31st or something. The March 24th one was fine. The 31st one, though, broke DISM. Actually, it broke the DISM API. And so the DISM API is used by the add Windows package commandlet. So when you look at DISM exe, that and the commandlets in PowerShell that correspond to DISM, they actually operate differently. So in some cases, you might find things that just don't behave as you would expect. Now, we've been using an add Windows package for a long time, and it's, for the most part, worked fine, didn't have any issues. But in March 31st, when I went to go and build an FFU, I couldn't service the latest release of Windows with the latest cumulative update that was out, which would have been this exact March 31st out-of-band update. It just kept failing. And a lot of people were complaining on the repo that we were having some issues as well. And so come to find out that something broke with the DISM API. However, the native DISM exe works fine. So I just reverted all the code to actually use DISM from the ADK, which is actually slightly older than, actually it's more than slightly, but it's older than what you might have installed on your local machine. But the reason I'm going back to the older ADK version of DISM is for consistency. So I know that everyone, for the most part, should be using the same version of DISM. So if something breaks, then I at least know that, okay, it's not that you have some different version of DISM versus me or someone else. Now we're all using the same version of DISM. And so if it breaks, then it should be broken for everyone. And I should know why. So that's that. And let's see, anything that I want to show through here. Last time we went over the UI, I think I pretty much talked about most of the new UI changes. Big change here on the media source. Now it's just more intuitive to download the ESD or provide your own ISO. Before, we just gave you the ISO path, and you had to know that if the ISO wasn't provided, that it would just automatically go and download. Now we've got just the radio buttons for this. We've got the updates. Nothing really changes with apps. All that stuff's pretty much the same. Office is the same. Drivers are all the same. The big change really is the build page now is just, it's a little more streamlined. We took out the create capture media, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Build, all that's the same. And then post-build cleanup. One change there is controlling whether or not you want to remove the downloaded ESD files. Me personally, I would prefer to allow VHDX caching. That's just going to be faster. VHDX caching means that once we build the VM once, we'll cache the VHDX file. And if you want to build the same exact VHDX again, or I'm sorry, if you want to build the same FFU again with the same Windows release, the same architecture type and all of that, then we'll just use a cache VHDX. So it's much, much faster than having to re-download an ESD or use a previously downloaded ESD and then create a VHDX, install Windows to that VHDX. Like, all of that takes a lot of time. Using the cache VHDX will reduce time considerably. So I prefer that versus keeping the ESD, but some people like having just the ESD. So we'll keep that. And then monitor is the same too. So, and with that, we're pretty much at time for today, but that was it.
Yeah, huge amount of work that you put into this and some awesome updates. So thanks for sharing and going a little more in detail with all of those, and not just the what, but why. I think we can all appreciate how much effort you put into it. So thanks for being the champion for Windows deployment across all these institutions. So nice work. Any questions? I know there was one question at the beginning of the call From Tom, we are looking at bringing Linux into Intune, and we are back. I enrolled one and ran into an issue saving a script. I made sure the group I was applying to was scoped to me, but it just would not save. It felt a bit like a compliance script where maybe the default tag is slipping in. Um, that's
You
the
can go ask Dave.
yeah. I
don't
don't
know.
know either what may have happened there. But I know that our Linux support is fairly limited. So if you want, Tom, feel free to drop us a note and email, and we can help. Maybe we can connect you to Dave or something like that. Outside of that, thanks as always for joining, and we will see you guys in a couple of weeks. May 5th, I may actually be traveling that week, so we'll work on what that will look like.
Looks like
Matt,
it'll be
really
me by
quick,
myself
any
again.
news or update with the unintended remote help feature being added? The last I checked, Matt, was the roadmap. It's still on the public roadmap listed for a July rollout. I have not seen an update for that. I would just encourage you to check the public roadmap often,
Yeah,
but as of right now, it's July.
if that changes, we'll definitely talk about it here. But
Yeah.
July is what the roadmap currently says.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. With that, y'all have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Take care.
See you guys later.